Welcome to the MMA Fan Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Stu and Blake.
Ricky, how you doing?
How's it going? We're just in stereo. We both ask our questions at exactly the same time. That's how this will work, the whole interview.
Ricky,
hey,
it's great that you've given us some time today, and we're gonna jump straight in. And we always sort of start at the very beginning. And I want to ask you, Ricky, if you can tell me where it was that you was growing up and how you got into mixed martial arts.
Yeah, I grew up in Vancouver, Washington, and this was during a time when Team Quest was like really blowing up right across the bridge in Portland, Oregon. So my dad and all my uncles would always be watching the UFC and Pride because they had Brandon Couture and like Matt Lindland and Tim Sylvia and stuff like that, some old school names over there at Team Quest. And I would go in. I might have been in elementary school. And I went to a couple like wrestling classes over there at Team Quest, and I ended up joining wrestling. And I think just I had always been interested in it. My dad and my older brother had always watched it, even though I thought those guys were like crazy. I think it was like a natural transition into fighting after like I was done wrestling.
What about confrontation, Ricky? Was you always like? Did you experience any of that as a young man, and was you comfortable with it?
Oh, I loved it. I don't know, from an early age. I don't know. I must have been like 5 or 6. My parents bought. My older brother's only 17 months older than me, and they bought us boxing gloves and told us that if we ever got like mad at each other, that we could like fight each other. And I was like, that is a great way to solve these problems. But and my older brother would whoop me. He whooped me every time I tried. Ever like, let's throw him on. Let's throw on the boxing gloves. He would just beat me up. And then I think it might have been like after maybe I hit like middle school or something like that, I like realized that I was getting a little bit bigger than him, and so I was able to hit him hard too. So I ended up getting him back. So I think that was it. I grew up with 3 brothers total, and that's all we did. We wrestled and we fought and we watched fighting.
I was kind of sort of directing that question more to like, tell me about when like, you was out of your loving house and you was on the road and there was people on the street. But no, you had it all happening at home. You didn't even have to go outside to get a fight. You was just fighting daily with your brothers.
Yeah. And I actually have 2 cousins who are professional fighters as well. Vince Morales, he's in the UFC as a bantamweight. And then my cousin, John Simone, he's fighting on Uriah Faber's. I don't know what the card's called, but it's on the Ultimate, or it's on Fight Pass. That'll be this Sunday.
That's this weekend.
And he's killing. He's a monster. This guy's a lightweight. He's as shredded as you could be for a lightweight, and he works hard. And I'm excited for him. So we got plenty of fighting in the family. I didn't have to go far to find it.
You would not want to be the drunk stranger turning up drunk at a Simon family barbecue, would you?
I had a question down here that was like, were any of your family members worried about you taking on a career in MMA? But it sounds like they were perfectly happy with you doing it.
I mean, it probably seems so natural for them, like, or at least because they had been so used to me competing and that kind of stuff for the majority of my life. But I mean, my mom, of course, she doesn't like to watch it. She supports me so much, but she doesn't like love that I get beat up for a living.
Yeah. Well, going into your career as an MMA fighter, you were undefeated as an amateur. You went 7-0, I think it was, as a pro before you had your first loss. When you went into that fight with Anderson Dos Santos, did you feel sort of invincible to come from, as you say, you've been wrestling your whole life, phenomenal amateur career, 7-0 as a pro. Did you feel kind of invincible going into that fight? And how mentally did it impact you having like the first loss?
I don't think I ever did feel like invincible, even though I had like this great amateur record. Even though it doesn't show it on most of my profiles, I must have had like a 9 or 11 amateur bouts, and I went undefeated through those. And then but I've always been kind of like a realist, especially when it comes to the sport. Like I know like it's very rare that someone goes unscathed in the sport as far as a record. And I don't know, and I was young. So maybe I was lacking a little bit of confidence. But I mean, it was definitely tough for me to have to get over that first one because there's so much riding on the line for that when I suffered that first loss. It was for the Titan FC World Title. Titan came to my hometown, so I was in front of like all my family and friends that I had growing up, and then yeah, it was my first loss, and there was I could have been signed to the UFC after that fight is what I was being told. So there was a lot that had happened like after that loss that I was like, man, it was a tough one for me. But I mean, I think it's like in this sport especially, it's like how you bounce back.
Absolutely. And you seem to have done that on a couple of times in your career, and every time better than the last. Like you went into the Dana White Contender Series after getting a couple more wins after that, I think, and then and you won your Dana White Contender Series fight, but unfortunately didn't get the contract. And it seems like that show on some level is slightly flawed because you get people that fight people that are quite a little bit below their skill level and they'll win quite easily and get the contract. But that doesn't mean that they're actually that great a fighter. And then you get people that might fight someone that's a really great fighter. These two people that are quite evenly matched and they have a close fight. Someone wins. The person that wins is a really fantastic fighter. You can see them having a great career in the UFC, like what you've proven, but they don't get the contract because they don't get that flashy knockout or something like that. After that fight, did you have any moments of feeling, God, is this UFC moment going to happen for me? Was that tricky to come back from?
Oh, most definitely, because I got to a point once again where I was like this close to achieving my dream, and then I won the fight, but it's not what they wanted at the time, and they didn't give me the contract. So I remember I went straight up to the matchmaker after they had called the winners, and I asked Sean Shelby. I asked him what he wants me to do, because I was prepared to do anything at that point, and he told me just to stay ready because I could be getting like a short notice call or jump back on the show or something like that. So I don't know. I was a little defeated in the moment because once again I was so close and it didn't end up happening. But I don't know. I think it ended up being a great thing because I fought for the LFA world title right after that, and I mean I'm the more I look back on it, I'm grateful for the way the journey played out.
Yeah, because as you say, you won the LFA title and then defended it with a first round knockout after that. Do you feel like those experiences actually were better for you? Like had you got the contract at Dana White Contender Series and gone into the UFC, the competition you would have thought might have been different. There might not have been as many eyes on you because when you're on the regional scenes and you're the headline attraction, you're the champion, everyone's eyes are on you. That pressure is on you, and you can maybe learn more from that than you can when you're opening up, say, the Fight Pass prelims, for example, and the audience is barely half there. Do you think in the long run that was actually better for you to have those experiences than maybe getting the contract early and going into the UFC straight away?
I don't. I mean, it's hard to say if it was better, but it was definitely great for the experience. In my head, in my mind, I was ready to fight UFC level competition already, and I mean, the guy I fought first for the LFA title was Chico Camus, who had 8 fights in the UFC. His last loss was Henry Cejudo, and he was on a 4 or 5 fight win streak since being cut. And then I beat him in a 5-round fight, and then I still didn't get signed, and I had to prepare to defend my title. But so like I felt like I was ready to fight this kind of competition, but there was just something that wasn't clicking between the UFC and myself as far as maybe the timing wasn't right or something like that. So, but I mean, I just think that you can't really beat the experience you get from fighting a 5-round fight like that, And then the next one, it was a knockout in a minute, so it wasn't played too bad, I guess.
Yeah, and when you achieve that dream, your dream you've been wanting to fight in the UFC for so long, you get that call up, you're in the UFC, Bruce Buffer's there saying your name. What is that like? How nerve-wracking is that when you've spent so much of your life building to this moment and it's finally there, you're in it? Are you clear-headed? Are you like, no, it's just a fight and I have to do what I've got to do? Or are the nerves going to get to you in that moment?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a lot. It's definitely like it's that moment you kind of been waiting for, walking out to the audience. I fought in some grungy small shows, on my come up. So then getting to walk out in a big fight. My first fight was in Atlantic City. My second fight was at Staples Center. So I made some cool walks. And yeah, I mean, the nerves were definitely high, but it definitely felt right. It definitely felt like it was time for me to make that step up and be fighting in the best organization.
I know Blake wants to ask you about that fight, so I'll let him jump back in a sec. But just ahead of that walkout, I'm always curious and always like to ask fighters about their pre-walkout routine. We've spoke to some fighters that sleep, which blows my mind, and we speak to other fighters that headphones on, music, or they want to occupy themselves, they want to be chatting to people. Like, how do you make sense of it all before you make that walkout? Have you got a specific routine, Ricky?
Yeah, I mean, I do, I'm very good with like my mobility and my stretching. So I get a good warm up, but I'm one of those kind that like to sleep and meditate and just kind of chill out, chill my mind. And then once once we start hitting the heavy warm up, I'm just totally focused and, on the fight. And, those nerves usually hit like, you're waiting and they're in the back and then you could be, I swear one time I waited 10 minutes. I'm sitting there bouncing and they're like playing all these, they play like a tribute, they played this, they played that, and then they run a commercial and then the highlights for the fight and to pump it up. And I'm like, dang, I bet I warmed up for 30 minutes in the back and then I sat out here and bounced for 10 minutes. So sometimes that could be nerve wracking when you're waiting to make the walk, but once the walk begins, I feel totally focused and I'm excited.
Well, going back to that first fight, you're against Merab Dvalishvili, which is a win that's aged incredibly well. I mean, you look at where Merab is now and what he's looking like. The fact that you have a win over him is I think looks fantastic on your resume. It was such a strange ending to the fight, though. The fact that the fight seemed to end, and only then did the referee realize that Merab was out and that you had choked him out, that guillotine choke, you choked him out. In those moments, were you like, because you said to the camera, I won that fight. Were you very sure at that point that that's what happened? Because it almost looked like, when I watched it back, it almost looked like during the takedown, you'd almost like Jake the Snake Roberts DDT'd him, and he almost looked knocked out in that moment on the ground with a minute to go and seemed to come back round again, but then go out again. How was that in those moments? Did you think I've won my debut, or did you think, oh no, this is going to get taken away from me?
Yeah, that's a pretty good breakdown right there, and that's how it felt. It felt like he like went out on the drop and then was going in and out, and ultimately, like when I like let go and I like get off him, his eyes were like kind of rolled back. Even it was brief, I will say, and it was so weird. But what they didn't show on the cameras was the ref wave off the fight, and there's a difference between like calling the round or stopping the round when it's over and waving off the fight. I saw the ref wave off the fight, I'm like, I won. And then eventually after a few minutes, Merab gets up and starts doing his victory parade. So then I start getting a little confused. And, and so I had no idea. I had no idea what was going to happen, honestly. But and I knew that fight was going to age well because that was only Merab's second fight in the UFC at the time, and he kind of had like another controversial loss to Frankie Saenz, a close decision, I believe. And I was like, I know we're going to meet up with each other again. I had a feeling. And after after my last loss, my last win, I thought that that was going to be the fight to make. I had like heard some rumblings from the UFC that they wanted to do that rematch. He hasn't lost since he fought me. I think he's on a 7-fight win streak or so. Yeah. I know I'm ranked a little bit behind him, but I belong right up there with all those guys. I know that I had that super close fight with Rob Font, and I beat Merab, and I've won 7 fights in the UFC on a good streak now. So I feel like that fight would be a good one to run back, but maybe in the future.
Absolutely. And one fighter you did fight was Uriah Faber. You beat Merab, you beat two fighters after that, Montel Jackson, and I can't remember who the other one was now, I think. But You go on a 3-fight win streak in the UFC, and then you're paired up with Uriah Faber. That, I know he wasn't strictly a UFC champion. He was WEC champion though, wasn't he? And he was someone that, as a fan of the sport, I'm sure yourself and me and Stu have like kind of watched him throughout his whole career, and he's always been sort of a stalwart of the UFC and someone that people have looked up to for many, many years. When you're booked in a fight with someone like that, we spoke to Tom Aspinall about this a while back, and he spoke about when he was booked to fight Andrei Arlovsky and how it's just a strange thing to go, this is a fighter that I've sort of grown up watching and been admiring, and now they're going to be standing opposite me in the cage. How was that in the preparation for the fight with Uriah? Was that ever on your mind? Like, God, I'm fighting Uriah Faber, or was it just another guy?
I didn't really like have that probably until we were in the cage, and I heard when we were in Sacramento, and I could hear the fans over there screaming. I was like, "This is pretty crazy. This is the craziest crowd I've ever been a part of." So that was when it hit me. But like leading up to the fight, I thought I was gonna kill him. I thought I was I'm gonna murder this man. Yeah. I set a goal to be ranked in the top 15 my first year in the UFC. I was on a 3-fight win streak. I had just beat Ronnie Yaya to get ranked, and that was kind of, I had a moment with him. Like, I'm fighting, because I used to watch Ronnie like WEC as well as Uriah Faber. And dude, I lead up to that fight, I had so many nightmares of him ripping off my limbs and stuff. I was like, man, I'm fighting Ronnie Yaya. And so I thought I was the man. Like, I just, I called my shot. I was like 25, 26, and got ranked in the first year. And I was like, I'm going to kill Uriah Faber on his comeback, fight. And, and then, you get humbled a lot in this sport for sure. Back to the drawing board. And like I said earlier, it's like you got to like come back and start winning fights to get over that like nasty feeling of a loss.
You mentioned Uriah, and you also mentioned earlier about your dad and that watching Randy and Tim Sylvia and stuff. Tell us a little bit about some of the fighters that were inspiring you as you was sort of coming through in the sport.
Oh yeah, well, for sure, Randy Couture. Like, I love that he was a wrestler and a veteran, and he has some good hands too. And I actually got to meet him when I was young, so that's probably why, And then quickly, I would say like Evan Tanner was another big one because he's from the area, and then Diego Sanchez, like, because we watched the first season of The Ultimate Fighter, and then he was Mexican American, so. My family and I were big fans of him. So I love the energy. He was a crazy energy, and I felt that. So those are a couple of guys that for sure, like early on, that I was like, those were like my guys. If they fought, I was watching.
Wonderful. You mentioned there, like, when Uriah made the sort of ring walk, and obviously, Sacramento made some noise. I'm always interested to know that when you're fighting, if you land a good shot, or you get a good position in the clinch, wherever, and the crowd react, does that roar of the crowd ever kind of filter through and kind of make you think, right, that's it, I've got to get the finish now? The crowd have roared. Does it ever sort of filter through into your mindset? Do you know where I'm going with the question?
Yeah. No, the fans could definitely like can change the energy in a fight for sure. But I think earlier on in my career, maybe something like that would affect me. Now I'm too focused. I feel like in there, like I've made the mistake. My first loss was actually in my hometown. I was telling you guys, and I had just thrown something, and the crowd went crazy. And then, it definitely got to me. I thought I had to do something else, and then I ended up getting hit with something, So I've learned from that a little bit, I think, and I think you gotta like keep your cool in there a little bit better.
Go on, go for it, Blake. No, go on.
Well, speaking of that focus you have now and what's going on now, you're currently on a 4-fight win streak in the UFC. You're ranked 12th, I think it is, and you were talking about wanting a guy ranked in front of you to fight next. Understandably, you're on a 4-fight win streak, but instead, as far as I'm aware, you're booked to fight someone we've had on our show a few times, a Welshman undefeated by the name of Jack Shaw. is it frustrating when you're looking for a fighter ahead of you to fight because obviously you want to progress and the contract comes through and it's a guy that's ranked behind you? Is that frustrating?
Um, a little bit. I mean, I was under the impression I was gonna fight maybe Marab or O'Malley next. That's kind of like the rumblings I had heard. But and then I get this fight, so I was a little like, all right, well, it's a little bit different than what I was being
Yeah.
told. But I mean, if I'm not one to argue, and I'm not one really. I feel like I'm the best at this point, and I feel like I should be able to beat this kid. I think if you compare our level of competition, I mean, I've fought much higher level competition, and I think I will be his toughest fight to date, and I don't think he could say the same for me. So at the end of the day, I was just like, it's not what I had expected, but I love to fight. My contract don't really change if I'm fighting the number 6 ranked guy, if I'm fighting the number 14th ranked guy. So I don't know. So I was just like, I'm down. I would love to put a 1 on this kid's record. He's very talented. We have a very similar grappling style, especially against the cage. And I'm always up to test my grappling against anybody. So I feel like it's a good fight for me. So a little weird I felt in the beginning, but I don't really say no to fight. So I'm excited for this one.
And it's taking place on, I think, July 16th, which is a week before the UFC is back in London. Was the 16th always the date that you were given, or was there ever potential for this fight happening in London?
Yeah, there was potential for it to happen in London, but I'm the higher ranked guy, and I would like to pay less taxes, so Jack can come over to the States and fight me.
Is that how it works? Because I was going to say, because my next follow-up question was going to be, is it a case that you don't really want your opponent to have that kind of hometown advantage? But what you've just said there makes more practical sense, I suppose, in terms of the tax situation. So when you fight abroad, you're paying more tax because you're possibly paying taxes to British government and American government? Is that how it works?
In the past, yeah, but I think maybe just I would be paying them abroad, and the taxes they take them like straight off. So it's quite a bit, and I mean, I would love to fight in London. It's that would be great, but I just think in the circumstances and thinking about for myself, and I decided to take the fight with the guy ranked behind me, and I just feel like it makes more sense for him to have to come to the U.S. and come to me. I'm cutting a bunch of weight, and I have to go to closer to his area to fight him. I don't think so. I think he'd come this way.
Yeah,
I mean,
that makes perfect sense.
we've had Jack on a few times, and he's a lovely guy, and you seem to be a great guy, and there seems to be lots of kind of respect, around this fight. A couple of questions, like, what are you expecting from Jack? And secondly, the fact that these are both, seem like nice guys that are very respectful. Do you ever get kind of, well, we know that Jack doesn't from this side of the pond, but do you ever get pulled into the sort of trash talk? And does it interest you because you see so many fighters getting media and press because they talk shit? And like, does that ever sort of feel like something you'd entertain?
Um, I love to talk shit, but like it has to be organic.
Yeah.
It has to be organic, and you got to know why you're doing it. And I don't mind it. I've done it. I've had some banter back and forth with a couple of my opponents in the past, and I think it's part of it. And really, like my brothers and I would fight for hours, and we'd be talking crap. My older brother would be beating me up for an hour, and then finally I'd reverse him, and then I would start talking crap to him, and I'd be beating him up for a little bit, and then that's kind of how it works. I mean, and we're already fighting. We're already bashing each other in the face with knees and elbows. I mean, I don't think it's that bad if there's some banter back and forth, but
Yeah.
it does get a little too crazy, and it gets a little weird when it's not like I don't know. I don't know, but I don't mind it. I don't mind it at the end of the day, and the fans seem to like it, and the fighters get rewarded for it. So it's kind of hard, you think like, oh, I hate when fighters act like this and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, the fighters who are acting like that seem to be getting the better spots and the better pay. So who knows?
And what are you expecting from Jack?
I mean, I'm expecting it all, really. I mean, he's well rounded. I feel like he's good everywhere. So I mean, I'm expecting a tough fight from this young kid. I don't, I'm getting to a point where, I'm a little over 10 years in the game, and I used to be the young buck fighting these older guys, and now I'm finally at an age. I'm 29 now. I'm fighting guys, younger than me. So I'm expecting a hungry kid for sure. 16-0. I remember what it was like to be undefeated as an amateur and undefeated as a pro, but you start fighting higher competition, and you start finding out who you really are.
Yeah.
You're not someone that talks, as you said, you any kind of trash talk you have is organic, and you're not someone that fakes that like some fighters do. One thing you do have a lot of the time in your favor, though, is an iconic hairstyle. And I'm looking at you now, and I'm like, firstly, your hair looks lovely, by the way. It looks fabulous. But I'm missing the mullet aspect of your hair. And I know the mullet is gone. But I heard you in an interview saying that during some of the grappling exchanges at training, you were having chunks of it sort of pulled out on the mat. Is that true? Was that just happening in training? Did it ever get in the way during fights?
Yeah, I think so too. I think, and my management and my coaches kind of thought it might have played a factor in some fights being closer than they should have been, with my mullet kind of whipping around with me reacting and head movement. Sometimes it can make it look like the damage is more than what it is. There's that, and then there's and I was getting twice in 1 week I got a bunch ripped out in some grappling sessions, and then I try to cut it shorter, and then I ended up just looking like Amanda Nunes. So I was like, all right, I gotta just cut my hair all the way off because I have the same haircut right now. It was too short. So yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna grow it back out because I love the mullet, and the fans seem to love it. But I needed a break. I needed a break for a little bit. Have a normal haircut for the wife.
Well,
fair enough.
Well, we've got some. We like to finish on some fun questions, and we've got a few of them. We don't want to take up too much of your time today, Ricky. But I've just got one more on the sort of lead up to a fight, and I want to ask you about the stare down. And is that all for the media, or when you're facing off? Are you drawing anything from that? Are you looking into their soul, and can you see if they don't fancy it, or if they're game as fuck? Like, can you sort of, what do you read from that?
Yeah, I love it. I love the intensity of a face off, and it's just like we both spent all this time getting prepared, and we made this weight, and then I kind of just want to see what you're about. You can tell a lot about someone's personality about when you get up there and face off with them, and I just like to stare right in their eyes and try to just read whatever they're putting off. Some guys try to fake some stuff, some guys are real in the moment too, but I mean, it's a perfect time to find out, and I love it. I love a face off.
Wonderful.
One of the things that's a real use to fighters is social media. It can help raise your profile, get people interested in fights, all that stuff. But there's negative things about social media as well, whether it be trolls or just the fact that it's a time vacuum and you find yourself scrolling through shit you don't even really care about, but you're scrolling through it anyway. When you think about social media, do you see that as a positive or a negative thing for you?
Definitely both. Like you're saying, like it's a great way for me to interact with the fans and for me to make extra money through sponsorships and stuff like that. But I mean, I'm experiencing the what is it? The what are they calling them? The JSA, Jack Shore Army, maybe. They're man, get off me, boys! Come on. No, it seems like that happens every fight, and that's what I like. That's what I like about like MMA fans, especially when you find someone from a different country. Every time I fought someone from a different country, it seems like a bunch of their people coming in with their flags or talking crap to me, and it doesn't really get to. I like it. I appreciate that kind of support. But where's mine at though, guys? Come on, where's the Pacific Northwest Army at?
Do you think because America is such a vast country and they've got so many gyms and so many, and there's probably rivalries between states and all that kind of stuff, it doesn't feel like the American fighters get the backing that like when like Jack Shaw, for example, or maybe you had it with Marab and maybe the Georgian people, anything like that. When these fighters from smaller countries or whatever, their fans seem to back them so much, and they are on the fighters that they're opposing in their next fights. Do you feel like the American fans just don't have that kind of links to their fighters in the same way that fans do when their fighters come from smaller countries?
Yeah, I don't think it's even close either, because you get a guy like American fighter, fighting someone from a different country. A lot of the times, if you ask someone in the U.S., they're going for the guy from the other country. So it's like, we don't have that same support, because they're just kind of. I think it is because it's so big and there's already so many rivalries. People just pick, their fighters. However, they don't just stick with guys from the U.S. unless it does seem like if it's from their state, a lot of times they'll show love. But even then, I have guys from my own state pick against me. I know that. Come on, guys.
One more question. The division you're in, when I look through the different divisions currently in the UFC, I would not want to be in your division right now. Like, that is a stacked division of killers. Like, do you ever think of going up or down and thinking, do you know what, it might be a little bit easier in one of them divisions? Because where you're at right now, man, it's stacked with killers.
Yeah, right. No, I own this division. I'm staying. I feel great here. I feel so strong. I'm too big to be a flyweight, and I'm too short to be a featherweight. So I'm gonna stick with being the buff bantamweight.
Who's exciting
right,
you
though.
in? Who's exciting you in that division?
Man, I feel like we're kind of hitting a point now where it's kind of like out with the old, in with the new, kind of. I feel like you see a lot of these guys who've been at the top of the division for a while, kind of exiting now, and you're getting the new blood kind of starting to take over the top 10. We're starting to see some shifts, and so I don't know. I think obviously with some of these guys who came down to our weight class, like Frankie and Aldo, and them trying to figure out the top with like TJ coming back. I just feel like it's a lot of excitement and a lot of talent, but I still think some of these guys are getting old. Mid to late 30s. It's almost time to start getting out of there. So I think in the next year or two there's going to be a big shift. But I like I said, that there's plenty of good fights to be made right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I mean, I do think bantamweight is the most exciting division in the UFC for sure.
Absolutely.
It is so talent stacked, and you're a huge part of that. And one of the other things I'd like to ask you is, what do you do for fun outside of training? I think you're sat in like some kind of souped up gaming chair there. Are you a big gamer? Like, what's your thing that you do for fun outside of training?
Oh man, yeah, gaming is definitely one. I'm working with this company, Dropping Gaming, and they set up some tournaments and stuff like that. I'm trying to get some things going with them. They hooked me up with a sick gaming setup, so I can. But I suck though. I'm not very good. All my brothers kill it. They're so good, and I just like play with them and have them carry me because I'm not very good. But man, my older brother was a Marine, so we enjoy to go shooting. I've been hunting, and I would like to go some more and actually catch something. The Pacific Northwest is known for its hikes, so we definitely go on a lot of hikes, try to get outdoors and stuff when the weather permits. Definitely, because it rains a lot out here. But yeah, I mean that's really it. I mean, I train 6 days a week. I don't think I've ever really even like if I'm traveling, I'm setting up training outside. So besides those things, I mean, if I'm at a camp, I love to find a nice restaurant and some nice beer, some nice coffee in the morning, something like that. Especially if I'm traveling, that's something I never really got to do. Growing up and before my fight career was to travel. So that's something I love to do.
Well, that leads me on to when the fight's over, the cuts have been done and all that, what's the go-to meal? What's the thing you're like, I can't wait to have a whatever it is?
Oh man, just to go. I think just because we're cutting our calories so much, the carbs are down. I'm skinny. I gotta be so skinny to make 135 pounds. So it's a tough. I always say no man should weigh 135 pounds, and so my favorite thing is just to go to a nice restaurant. Usually with the team right after the fight, we go to a nice restaurant and just kind of do it up, and I just stuff my fat face and that's it.
Is it just anything specific that you're really craving, or just anything?
Usually, probably I find some like nice like handmade pasta or maybe like a dry aged steak. I'm bougie these days. I never.
Yeah, it's well bougie. A lot of people are just like, oh,
Let's go.
pizza, like Domino's pizza or anything like that. You're going for the steak and
No,
the nice pasta and stuff.
Yeah, no. If I'm gonna use these calories, I'm gonna use them well. So I don't really like to just eat like a pizza or a cheeseburger. It has to. I don't know. If I'm gonna cheat, it has to be worth it.
Well, I love it. I think that's a new nickname, Ricky Bougie Simone. Let's do it. Especially with the new hair as well. You could go proper Wolf of Wall Street with that style.
Yeah, people don't expect that from a mullet. That's why.
Exactly. You've taken us by surprise.
Ricky, I've got one more question for you. And in a parallel universe, you could fight any fighter from the past. Who would you like to have fought?
Oh, from the past. Miguel Torres.
Nice.
And we can settle it. We can settle it with the mullet.
Nice one. Ricky, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for giving us your time, and we wish you all the best for the future, mate. Thank you so much.
Thanks loads, Ricky.
Appreciate you guys having me on. That was a blast. Thank you.
Absolute
No worries
pleasure.
at all.
Thank you.